Maybe that'll help. Maybe. Oh yeah, there we go. I got it straightened out. Maybe. Okay. It looks like I should be up. It's, I see that you guys can hear me now, right? Yeah. I think I got it. I got it straightened out. Okay. Um, yeah. So, first question in there, about the context for how this is getting played back. My yeah. This is always a challenge when it comes to streaming anything because there's always going to be a delay. But then also running back and forth between like a number of different softwares is kind of a pain. So yeah, I mean I'm not like super excited about having how I had to jerry rig the chain of all of the video, and then also the audio and bouncing to the stream, and then from one stream to other streams. It's kind of just the way that we have to deal with it now. Considering, so normally, I was talking with Faith about this a little bit earlier, but one of the things that I was struggling with is that normally, like right now, this video footage that was in the mix originally. This stuff is video that I shot on campus in my studio, in one of the studios that I operate there, and I was shooting that footage for a video that I was producing. And what I would have preferred to be able to do for this performance would have been to run the liquids live, and just have the web camera feed into the feedback patch video waves, and then run out to the stream. So it would have saved about 2 or 3 steps in the chain, which would have helped in terms of playback. Luckily today it played back pretty well while we were streaming. Earlier, when I was rehearsing on my Twitch, the last couple of weeks, I was dropping frames all over the place from VLC. It was between VLC and the siphon, it was just totally out of control. So there has been a number of different iterations of what ended up going in today, but yeah, I was glad to see that at least that it was working and it was coming out. So, what other questions do people have? I guess I can maybe talk about what was going into the patch, and then I'll talk about the patch. And then if a question pops up in the chat there, I will try and get to it. So this the middle section included some animation, and the animation stuff is a remixed version of the video that I have in the Well Now What the Fuck show. So that's on the YouTube playlist. I think in the Germ Corner or whatever, on that show. So I wanted to include that in the performance, so it wasn't just liquids, but also to change things up through the sequence. So as far as that goes, the animation comes from motion capture with hair simulations, and then the hair simulations are sort of overlaid. So I run them usually a couple of different times and then composite them together. And then I also ran some particle simulations. So they sort of particles fly off of the body as it's moving. This motion capture was from a dancer, so it's actually like a good performer. I don't know if you've seen any of the ones where I've captured myself for it, but the movements aren't nearly as interesting. Not a really great physical performer or dancer, but yeah. So that's that was the middle section, and then like I was saying, the liquids are stuff that I've been working with on the side for doing live visuals. Normally, I have a gig in the spring. early May for Milwaukee Psych Fest, and I'm right around now is when I'm usually trying to ramp up my set for that. And this year it's gotten postponed, so I'm kind of on hold. And I thought this was a really good chance to mess. So as far as liquids go, this is just like old school light show stuff. It's oil and water, some watercolor to dye the water, and then oil dyes to dye the oil. And other than that, it's really just glass plates and messing around. So it's really fun to work with, and I enjoy putting it into feedback as a way to sort of like shift colors and change things. And the software that I was running it through for the performance was called Video Waves. It's made by Andre J. Creative Coding. You can see his site here. Check it out. He's also got a Facebook group for some of this, and there's also some hardware tools that he's also. So if you're curious about it at all, just check it out. It has a number of different video inputs, so it can go from a siphon or from web camera, and then it feeds into 3 or 4 feedback loops, in which case then you can sort of manipulate the signal and key it more or less or whatever, and shift colors, and that was pretty fun to explore. As far as colors and things like that, yeah, a lot of it just comes from what happens when you start to separate out a video signal, which is inherently RGB. So you'll start to get some of those same things to happen. But when you use different blending or multiply the image, overlay it differently, then you'll start to get some of the other like crazy weird colors. So for the liquids, everything is pretty standard in terms of like basic colors. The second section, I think, was a little bit different. It was more green, but came from the same session. So over time, adding in different dyes or colors or whatever, and it starts to mix or blend together. So those things are usually like really for me when I'm doing my light show is mostly like primary colors in that workflow. And then in the animation stuff, I'm usually trying out a lot of different stuff. So I don't necessarily like have a specific color palette that I'm trying to work with or that I'm trying to choose, but a lot of it comes up through the signal chain and the different processing that's going on and what else is happening with the video. So some of it is just intentional and some of it is more improvised as things are done. What else could I talk about here? See, anybody got more questions? Also, I'm going to put my Twitch in the chat also, in case anybody's interested, because I've been also doing some classes that I teach live streamed, and then also some studio sessions. I usually try to get about once. So okay, cool. Couple of questions. First, as far as influences and things like that, yeah, there's some really great light show. So I originally when I started doing light show, well, okay, let's step back a little bit. Way back when, in the mid '90s, when I was in high school, I started working on a local cable access channel that was run out of our high school. And we were pretty fortunate to have a lot of control over what we wanted to do. So we made a bunch of like weird shows, and I had my friends host a news program that I would set up, and I would run the production and all that kind of stuff. And through that process, I was also had some friends that were DJing and hosting like rave kind of music events. They were a lot more low key than like a rave or something like that. So we started to do video with the light show for their dance stuff. And so when I started doing that, it was really just like we had a video camera and a bunch of VHS tapes and a video mixer, and we were sort of like running things back and forth and all that kind of stuff. I got out of the habit of doing that work when I went to college and got into the art program. I took a pretty traditional path when I was in undergrad. So I was doing painting and drawing and ceramics and that sort of. When I was in grad school, I started to get back into animation and video and just experimenting that way. And along the way, I also started to work with some bands and make some little music videos and things like that. And for whatever reason, I just kind of always ended up in the like more psychedelic kind of visual end of the spectrum, even though like I'm, I don't know. Sometimes it's a little bit weird or it looks a little bit, I guess, cheesy sometimes, but I've been kind of on the side interested in the visuals for liquid light shows and stuff like that for a while. I didn't really have the vocabulary or really do that work for a really long time, and so it came up. There was a group of guys called Bread Mothers out of Milwaukee, and they used to do like video synthesis and liquids and all kinds of stuff. And they would do the visuals for Milwaukee Psych Fest, and this is like way back when it started. And so one year they let me sit in with them for a little bit, and I helped out. And then the next year I helped out a little bit more, and then things kind of changed. And so over time it's sort of shifted, but I've had that gig in the background for a number of years. So in the last couple of years, I bought my plates from Liquid Light Labs. You should check this guy out, Steve Jablowski. He does some tutorials and stuff like that. He sells setups for this, so that's where I bought my set, which is mostly just 2 plates and some dies and stuff like that. But what I had been doing prior to now or to this year was I was working with a Max patch that I had built that had some feedback set up into it, and then it also was running vSynth, which is a package in Max for video synthesis. So the liquids would go into this patch, and then it would also be generative a little bit, and you could control it. And the way that I set it up that way so that I could perform the whole light show myself. So then I would be able to deal with the software, at least get it kind of set up to where it was doing something that I thought was visually interesting, and then I would be able to move the plates and move the oil and stuff like that around. So do the liquids and then also make adjustments to the patch as I went. So this year, because that I was seeing what Andre J was doing with his video waves software, I thought that would be really fun to try out. So I only had time to grab a copy of it and start playing with it once everything got crazy and I wasn't really able to get out of my studio, my house too much. And it's been kind of fun to mess around with it a little bit. So as far as other light shows, at Psych Fest, the main stage is with the Mad Alchemy Liquid Light Show, which is really great. They've been using like let's see, 4K like laser projectors and stuff like that. Their setup is crazy amazing, and they've been doing like some really big shows. But they're always out for Psych Fest every year, and they do the main stage, and then I get the outside stage. And they're usually running like 4 or 5 plates and like 4 or 5 projectors and all kinds of craziness. So after seeing them a few times, then that's when I really like dove into trying to figure out liquids more. But I like to also like mess around with software in addition to doing the physical stuff. So that's why I like working with feedback and kind of remixing things and improvising live is just really fun to do. The music for the performance was from Jeff Harriet, who's one of my colleagues here at UW Whitewater in Whitewater, Wisconsin. And I've worked with him in the past on a few things here and there. We did a show over a year ago at the gallery that was about privacy and social networks and stuff like that. And we made some games with me and Jeff, and then also Nick Wong. But this time, in the past, I've also had Jeff work with me for soundtracks for some of my animations, kind of work. So he was kind enough to generate a new score for the performance today. So I'm gonna go back probably in the next week or so, and I'm gonna record a version of this so that it's not streaming, and then I'll be able to get that up, share that, and that will have the soundtrack and all that kind of stuff. As far as what I have coming up or what's going on next, I am kind of in a little bit of a dead spot because I'm not going to be able to get into all of my equipment or get more of my equipment here for a little while, and I won't be able to get into the motion capture studio. But just this last week, I used up a bunch of my some old frames from a different project that we didn't end up going in this direction for this one, and so I decided that I would just pump it out. I've been doing a monthly animation project that's all from motion capture data and sort of like little experiments or whatever that incorporate the motion capture, hair simulations, particles, those sorts of things. So kind of abstracting the human form in movement or in motion. That's like I'm trying to put one out every month. And this was the last set of like new motion capture data that I had. It probably was captured or recorded in like early March or end of February or something like that. And the piece that will be end up the actual stuff will be used for is a lot tighter and way more abstract. But anyway, I had the frames that I had rendered out. I think I had about 1,200, 1,500 frames or something like that. No, 15,000. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so I 5,000. I needed to keep the monthly project going and getting to the end of April, so I just put those together. So this is like what some of the newer work that I'm doing will look like. And so overall, I guess if I were to break it down in terms of like what I'm up to in the studio, there's kind of like 3 threads right now. One is this kind of more long-term animation projects with motion capture, and they take a long time to develop. As far as like doing all of the rendering and everything else, it just stacks up really long and takes quite a while to get there. So that's one project that's kind of been ongoing. I had sort of taken a break as we updated our motion capture studio, and now that it's upgraded, I've been able to kind of get back into this work. So I'm doing that. I'm also running, messing around with this live visuals and doing some stuff like that when the opportunities arise, or if someone asks for me to produce something for like say a video promo or something like that. And then the third thread of what I've been doing, or my other body of work, is just the daily drawing stuff. So these are drawings that I make. I make one drawing a day, usually not every single day. Some days I miss, but I make a drawing either with ink or graphite on paper or paint. Right now I'm acrylic paint and just painting over the same painting. And then I photograph those, and then I put them into 3D space, and I make a gallery for myself this year. I've proposed this project so many different times to so many different places, and I never get it never works out, or it's not interesting to the gallery or whatever. I don't know. So I just decided that this year I would stop worrying about it and just like make my own gallery. And I think after talking to a few people, there might be an end product. Like I might end up trying to work with someone to get this into a format where I can just put it into a VR space or whatever, and then the exhibition will be there. The problem is that in the scene, I pretty much filled all of the walls, and I've got probably another like month and a half or whatever, and then I'll run out of wall space in my gallery. In which case, then I'm gonna have to start making some that will be more sculptural. Last year, my daily drawings were fairly sculptural, so I think it will probably be something along. But that's the other thing. So those are kind of the three bodies of work I have going right. So for the hair simulations, if I go really far back in time, some of the work that led up to doing the hair simulations was with a different kind of simulation. This is going to go back quite a ways. I've also done smoke and some other stuff too. Right now, I'm kind of just stuck on hair. See if I can find it. Yeah. So really long time ago, when I first started working with motion capture, um, so I kind of have always been interested in abstraction a little bit more visually. And so when I started working with motion capture, um, I wanted to think of some ways to abstract the form so that it wasn't like I capture this person's movements and then I put it onto a body that looks just like them. And so what I found when I started to attach the motion capture data to simulations was that the simulation is running, based on its math and all of that kind of stuff. And so when you connect something that's simulated to something that comes from capture, you end up with something that's sort of like really artificial, but also is based off of actual physical movements in space. I wrote a couple of papers about some of this stuff. I was also using data that was really broken. Our old motion capture system was not very great. It was prone to errors. And so if you had that on like let's say a humanoid avatar or something like that, the capture would break, and so then their body would flail around, and I thought that was interesting. But when it looks too much like the body, it wasn't really as interesting to me. So putting it on the simulation sort of kind of still kept the human movements or the person moving in space, and then also sort of took it into a different space where it was kind of partially artificial. So these ones were called phantoms. Some of the data was like recorded when there was nobody even on the capture stage. The system was just like freaking out because of light or whatever, and it would just have this skeleton like flailing around in the space. So I started to capture that and then add it to these cloths, so they kind of became ghosts and the ghostly phantoms and that kind of stuff. So afterward, I don't know why, but I just got tired of doing the hair, or sorry, the cloths, and I wanted to start trying some other simulations. So I had a series that were the cloths, and then after that, I started to do some that were hair. And the hair is also a really interesting simulation because it's a particle and it sort of comes out of a mesh. And then based on whatever properties you assign to that simulation, once you run the cache through or cache the animation or whatever, bake it, you'll end up with some really crazy stuff because it's trying to follow some basic physics or some basic math. And there's all kinds of like really great properties like springiness and gravity that can affect it. And then if you add a wind force and things like that, then you can get some really interesting stuff to happen. So some of these were um, these are mostly from a couple of years ago. I was, in addition to working with simulations and motion capture, I was also looking at Nick Cave's work and sound suits and things like that. And so obviously that was probably, you can see pretty apparent in the aesthetic of the animation. But the sort of same thing would happen with those simulations as with the cloth. That it would still because it came from the body moving in space, it still is has reference to that, or still has some of those qualities, but through the digital simulation and everything, it starts to become more abstract and it starts to become something other. It's sort of weird furry suit hair monster kind of stuff. And so I also started to play around with those, with adding in different kinds of particle simulations to that workflow. And so the particles in some of these, if you check them out on my Vimeo, or I don't know if they're on my YouTube, um, but they'll flock. So they'll have similar hair simulation, but then they'll flock around. And so I did those for a while, and then I kind of took a break while we were updating Motion Capture Studios to a new system. And so since then, I've just been kind of playing around with some of the new hair simulations and new particle simulations, and just trying out some different things and seeing what can happen. So this one is just particles, and they're sort of like emitting, and there's a wind force to disperse them away in a direction. But this comes from the dancer base for a project that we were working on, and then kind of everything started changing, so that project got set aside. I've had actually like 3 or 4 projects that have gotten either postponed or kind of canceled, and although it's like kind of sad, it has also given me the opportunity to like repurpose that work and just try different things out. So even if the intention originally was for something really specific, I'm able to kind of adapt it and mold it into something different and play around with it. So yeah, that one's from February. And then the ones more recently, the March one is the one that's in the Well Now WTF show. And then this new one I just released at the beginning of the That's kind of a quick overview. I don't know. We're at an hour or over an hour now. Should we keep going or maybe close out? What do you guys think? Well, anyway, yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thanks to Faith and Lorna and Wade and Silicon Valley and Kalani and everybody for setting up the exhibition. Yeah, well, oh, sorry, there's another question popped up. Liquids and motion capture. Yeah, definitely, I could do that. I was playing around with that a little bit a while ago. I haven't done it recently, but maybe this is something to come back to. What I was doing was taking some of the footage and using it for some of the materials. So like I could make an video material or something like that. This one was one that was kind of somewhere in between. A lot of the visual is from the a vsynth actually. So it's a video synthesis recorded to make this materials, and then these are motion capture, and instead of them being on a hair simulation or something like that, they're on metaballs. So they have some kind of physical properties and stuff like that too. I haven't gotten it to work the same way. I was working with a student on a research project, and he wrote a few scripts, Python scripts in Blender, that I could just import the motion capture data directly, and then it would generate the metaballs for me. And so then I could just adjust the script to get it to work right. But yeah, I haven't gone back to this for a while. I probably will at some point. This one was 360. I also did one that was in VR that had some hair and some of this stuff in it. But yeah, I've just been kind of like too many things going on, trying to straighten things out. But yeah, I can see like a lot of my work over time, like these threads kind of come and go, and they overlap, and then they line up, and then they kind of diverge and come back. So yeah, that's definitely something I'll continue. But yeah, I think I was about to wrap it up for today. And saying the thanks to everybody. So thanks to everybody for that hosted the show. It's been really great to keep me motivated and to have something to work on the last few weeks and to experiment with and to keep kind of motivated to continue working. Also want to say thanks to Andre J for the Video Waves software. That's been really fun to play around with the last few weeks. And other than that, please feel free to message me or hit me up anywhere. I will love to talk more about some of this stuff. And my Twitch is Gridworks1. You can find me on there at least once a week, just streaming studio time. So less of like performing and more of just working on projects, that kind of thing. And then I also do some of my classes on there. It's probably not that interesting to you, but maybe check it out sometime. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna shut the stream down here in a minute, and we can touch base on Facebook or wherever, Instagram, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, on the internets, right? Thanks, everybody.